Hello, everyone. Hope you guys are having a good deploy session so far. My name is Bikram Gupta. I work as part of the Kubernetes team here at DigitalOcean. And I'll be covering this session about Kubernetes Starter Kit, why we need it and how we build it. We have thousands of users who use Kubernetes. And one thing that we have noticed is that it's quite easy to set up your cluster. You just go to the DO control panel, you do a few clicks, and then you have a cluster ready. But the challenge that we see users running into is what next? What next means how do you deploy your application? How do you update it frequently? How do you ensure that you have appropriate monitoring, logging? If things go wrong, can you take the backup and restore? And those things need time and investment and resources. So the goal of this session is to enable you towards building your own so-called starter kit that's repeatable and that you can use across all your projects. I'll quickly go through some of the concerns that we hear from our developers, and this is quite synonymous with some standard industry survey like that from the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. The very first one is the complex landscape. It's obvious that the Kubernetes landscape is changing very rapidly. So many new tools, almost every quarter or so, releases which are very frequent, newer ways of doing things. And then on top of that, even the product ecosystem, like how do you do storage, networking, the service networking, all of that is evolving very rapidly. So navigating that and identifying what is right for you is a challenge. The second one is upgrade, which goes along with this changing ecosystem. One release every quarter, and then if you have 10 different products that are running, you have to think about how to upgrade the products as well as Kubernetes so that you don't have any end user traffic impact. And the networking. Networking is all about bringing the end user traffic to inside your cluster or to your applications. There is a default way of doing it, and there is an optimized way of doing it. And as your application starts to see more load and you need better security and better performance, networking becomes a very key player. Then you have standard day-to operations things like monitoring, troubleshooting, understanding what's the security posture of your cluster, all of that. Cost is a factor that matters when your cluster itself is dynamic. You have auto scaling configured, you are using block storage, load balancers, and then you want a deterministic view as to what would be your overall cost. Given that we looked at the challenges, there's one more area which is equally important, which is what is so different about Kubernetes? And what's like in a typical virtual machine, your developer will take the code and then they will just push the updated application to the virtual machine, or they may even build the application in the virtual machine and then run it as an application. That is so simple. However, in the Kubernetes world, even if you have your code, you wrote it, and then you are going to build it, even after that, there's a process involved in taking that to the cluster or running that as an application. After you're running that as an application, you also have to worry about all the operational aspect. So in a typical enterprise world, you can separate the development as well as operations. They belong to different groups. And the job of a developer is just write the code, build the application. The job of the operations team is rolling that out, monitoring it, troubleshooting it, doing the backup and restore and all of that. However, in the Kubernetes or the cloud native world, we see that all these activities, basically what you own is what you build, is what you deploy, and then you are responsible through the life cycle. So it's not unusual to see that you as a developer spending about 20 or 30% of the time writing code and 70 and 80% of the time doing the other things. And so if the other things are not done efficiently, then there is a possibility that it's just a drag on your time. And that's the objective. The objective is, can we simplify, or can we come up with an opinionated setup so that these other things that you need to do, part of the ops and the infrastructure, are fully automated. Now, the good news is that there are lots and lots of tools, and there are lots and lots of service cloud provider specific services. The difficult part is choosing which ones meet your need. And then you as a developer have to make a decision on whether you want to stick to one cloud provider, or you want to build things that are cloud provider agnostic to an extent. Cost is another part. Like if you think of simple logging and monitoring, pick any of the hosted services providers out there. It's not unusual to see a $15 per node bill for monitoring, and then 10 cents per gigabyte of log data. And if you start thinking of months or years, those bills add up really quickly. So that brings us to what are we, or what can simplify our life as a developer. And I'm a Kubernetes user myself. So as a developer, if I could simply focus on writing my code and focus on the business, and somehow come up with a repeatable practice to take care of all the operational aspects, that would be a huge value. And it would be even better if the application would just work without me having to worry about operational aspect. Now, these are ideal scenarios, and to get there, it has to be a journey. It cannot be like point A to point B where you just jump to that stage. So let's talk about do-it-yourself starter kit. The title of this session was, how do you go about building your own starter kit? And over the next few slides, I'm going to provide some guidelines on how to approach it, and also an example that you can basically clone and start building your own. The typical goals would be, you have to decide whether you want to pick industry-proven open tools, or you want to stick to something that's depending on the provider that you are on. You want to pick the provider specific. There's no magic bullet. You just have to figure out what you are expecting from your Kubernetes deployment. Now, when you are getting started, and if you are betting everything on Kubernetes, it just makes sense that you pick the industry proven tools so that wherever you go, they just work. Cloud agnostic, we see that many of our developers are starting to have that. Whenever they think of building something, they want to have the freedom so that it works in different cloud, and it also works on their laptop. So it just makes their life easy and makes it future-proof. Predictable cost is another part. Every time you are adding a tool, you have to think of additional cost for that tool. You have to think of additional manpower that you need to invest, and then the cost can rise up quickly. We have been thinking about this a lot, and the goal is instead of just starting with a bare bones Kubernetes, can you start with a full stack Kubernetes? Full stack, not in the industry term, but full stack means the things that you need for your day-to-day operations. And if you could do that, even if there's an initial learning curve to it, even if it takes time to build it, at one point, if you're able to build that stack with one click, then in the long run, you're going to save a lot of time for every new project that you run on Kubernetes. And so we started working on example starter kit. Let me put a disclaimer saying that it's a work in progress, but we are committed to work on it, and you will see a lot more updates from us. We are also going to move it to the GitHub repo for DigitalOcean Kubernetes as we start updating it and automating it over time. What does it contain? It contains, obviously, set up your DigitalOcean Kubernetes, and then do things like monitoring, logging, backup, route traffic using Ingress, do your advanced observability and troubleshooting for services using Linkerd, and then your GitOps practices. Let's go through one by one, and let me share more details on what specific things are we looking to do. Monitoring is something which is very, very critical to anything that you run, and I simply cannot undermine it. So monitoring is the first one that we recommend, and it should be part of your starter kit. If you're starting a Kubernetes cluster, you have to have monitoring in place. You're going to monitor how the nodes are behaving, how your Kubernetes resources are behaving, how the API server is behaving, how your applications are behaving. And the good news is that metrics are low overhead. It's like just small data points. So even if you collect and save the metrics for 6 months, it's not going to add up to your storage cost. The one difficult part is when you start doing all these matrix things, you have to think about how you really cannot start building the code for collecting metrics. You have to start at a baseline. And the great thing is that the folks at Grafana Labs did a good job of identifying the best practices in what metrics you collect, what alerts you need, what rules you need to have. And they put all of that together as part of the kube-prompt stack. We just took that, installed that using Helm, and then disable some of the things like scheduler, controller, for which you don't have access to because those metrics are hidden inside the DO management plane. And then it's just good to go. You have Grafana and you have Prometheus, and you have all the metrics and lots of dashboards which are already pre-built for you. Obviously, it needs optimization for your own setup. For that, you have to invest time, which will happen once you start using it. But the good news is when you install it, you get lots and lots of dashboards and alerts out of the box. Logging is a big pain that I see with a lot of our users, and I've seen that in my past life as well. The good news is that there are products like Elasticsearch, which are proven. They've been there for a long time when it comes to logging. And in the recent years, like in 2019, Grafana Labs released a product called Loki. The difference between Elasticsearch and Loki is that Elasticsearch and other products and Loki is that the other products that tend to index the entire set of logs. It means you think of, if you have 1 megabyte of logs, you think of, let's say, 5 megabytes of indexes and all that index data. If you're looking at HA, that also adds up. And then obviously over time, your cost is going to grow. Loki took a totally different approach. Their mindset was that I, as a developer, often I'm interested in searching logs based on metadata and not the log text. And so they only index the metadata. They store the metadata in a high-speed storage. And then for the rest of the logs, they basically compress it and store it in spaces or any object store. So now you have a very powerful logging system, which you are able to search for, looking for logs based on which pods, which time duration, and all of that, because that is indexed. And then once you search for the logs, Loki is retrieving that from spaces or S3 bucket. So over the long term, the overall cost of ownership is going to be significantly lower. And another good part is that the front end is along with Grafana. You can build dashboards where both metrics and logs can be viewed side by side. So there can be some really good workflows that you can build. And by having Loki and Prometheus from the get-go, you'll also establish a best practice where anything that you are installing, or even for your control planes, all your logs and metrics are available to you. The next one is backup, restore, migrate. While I see a lot of our users use Velero, I also see a lot of them not using it. The Velero should be like a must-have, or any backup tool for that matter, should be a must-have for your cluster. Velero was built by Heptio team, part of VMware now, and it's very well maintained in the community. You want to back up your stateless applications, stateful applications, you want to schedule those, you want to build your own hooks after the backup has taken place. All of that is possible and it can simply be automated. And the backups are snapshot. It means even if you're doing hourly backup, your cost is not going to be like doubling every hour. It's going to be just additional changes which are going to be backed up. And so if you make it a best practice of using Velero along with your cluster, the good news is that anytime you want to upgrade or migrate or do a disaster recovery, it's just a matter of doing Velero restore in the other cluster that you have created. The next one is a big one, which is networking. And we just had I hope some of you guys attended the session that we just did on networking best practices. Ingress is responsible for getting traffic into your cluster. And Ingress and API gateways are similar, but API gateway does slightly more. I'll give a very small example. You have HTTP traffic coming in. You say that HTTP traffic with path X goes to service X. Path Y goes to service Y. That's like ingress. And API gateway would be, you would be able to say things like, if there is a gRPC call or gRPC API request coming with certain type of gRPC request, which is going one step deeper, that's an API request. And you are able to specify that, okay, if that request comes in, then route it to service A. And so as you can see, API gateway is basically a superset of Ingress. We have lots of products and all are battle hardened. I mean, I have no preference. You have Nginx and Kong gateway, very battle hardened. And recently in the last 2 years, Envoy-based proxies are really coming up. And those are picking up very fast. And these Envoy-based proxies are like Ambassador, Glue, Istio Ingress. And for this tutorial, I picked Ingress and API gateway together because once you start to get a feel of whether you need to expose API, you are going to need API gateway, and it doesn't hurt to have a single product doing both. There are lots of useful features like automated certificate management. You want to enable authentication for your services. You want to rate limit, let's say 5 requests per second or per minute. All of that is possible. The next one is the advanced observability. Many of you would have heard about the 4 golden signals for service monitoring. And these are like health metrics. When you have Linkerd, it enables you to do advanced observability and monitoring for the services. And also by collecting the data, it also enables you to diagnose when there are issues which are with the services, which are really difficult to diagnose. So think of Prometheus at a higher level, Linkerd going all the way into the application API level for individual services. It's a low overhead tool. It's also a service mesh, so it allows you to do things like MTLS and multi-cluster networking, all of that. If it fits your need, by all means try it. But if your needs are met by Prometheus and Grafana, all good. The last one is the GitOps. The GitOps is something which is new in the horizon, but I see a lot of users starting to use it. In the traditional world, you used to have some kind of an external product which used to push code to Kubernetes or to a virtual machine. In the new world, you run a operator in your cluster and you tell the operator to sync all the application configuration with a source of truth, which is in the Git repo. So now you are maintaining your Git repo, your application configuration in the Git repo itself, which is very powerful. We recommend Argo and Flux. Those are the 2. And in this tutorial, we are going to probably pick both, or if we have to pick one, we'll pick Argo CD. And finally, you want to be able to look at what's the budget that you want to allocate. Like let's say that you have a 8 CPU and 16 GB of RAM. If you installed all these tools, what's the budget it takes? There is no straight answer to it. You should measure the budget with the baseline, which is the install itself. And then when you have fully loaded cluster. But I started doing some basic work and I see that when I installed logging and monitoring, it took about 400 megabyte of RAM and minimal CPU. But that's the baseline, not with the traffic. Okay, so finally wrapping up here, the installation is pretty simple. getting to a setup where you can actually be productive right from the day one means you need to build your own starter kit. At DigitalOcean, we are going to work and help you out so that so that over time you'll have a starter kit that can be fully automated. Right now, I think it's 30% there. But if you want to try out, just clone the repo, try it out, give your feedback in Discord or in Slack channel, and we'll be happy to work together with you. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to wrap it up here.